I am really concerned about the health and well-being of people who use drugs during COVID. My pet peeve has to do with the fact that COVID has just increased the gaps that were already present for marginalized groups, such as people who use drugs. Overdoses have skyrocketed during the pandemic amongst people who use drugs amidst an increasingly toxic drug supply. But the overdoses did not start yesterday, and there has been systemic neglect on the side of policy to address it. The overdoses during the pandemic may have been unable to be completely avoided, but these harms could have been minimized through taking earlier steps to address the gaps in services for marginalized people when activists, drug use experts, and academics have told them for years about this issue. This is a personal topic for me because I have focused my HRE on women who use drugs and their ability to access supervised injection sites in Ottawa. I have talked to frontline workers who and have watched them explain on how local supplies are increasingly toxic due to the closing of borders and how their sites have had their hours limited due to COVID. Last year in Ottawa, a 17-year-old girl overdosed alone in an Ottawa hotel room. And her story is not unique. There are countless stories across the nation of people who were loved and who died unnecessarily because of taking drugs that were contaminated. However, it feels like all of the calls from activists and academics on this issue for a decriminalization of drugs and an implementation of safe supply have fallen on deaf ears. How many more people have to die before a policy window is opened up? This problem is one of significance because the solutions have been suggested for years since the beginning of the overdose crisis, and yet little has been done because of stigma and prejudice towards substance users. There is a fundamental misunderstanding of addiction. Policy is often characterized it as something that could be corrected with criminalization, instead of it being a symptom of root issues such as trauma and racism. As I have seen countless times in the comments section of any Facebook post on supervised injection sites, NIMBYs demonize substance users as bad, their services as ones that will devalue their property values, and see their deaths as inevitable and less valued because of notions that they do not contribute enough to society. All of these serve as barriers to eliminate harm that is perpetuated through outdated drug policies. In terms of ethics, there are a lot of ethical considerations for the policy neglect of people who use drugs during COVID. Harm reduction is an evidence-based, client-focused approach that aims to reduce the social and health harms associated with substance use without requiring that the substance users stop. They try to take a consequentialist approach and they aim to eliminate the harms that are associated with substance use. And the harms may be more of a product of moralistic attitude or prohibitionist policies. When the government creates further barriers for harm reduction or refuses to implement policy with the harm reduction lens, they are actually failing to eliminate harm for substance users and instead perpetuate the further harm and neglect. To put it bluntly, some of this blood from all these deaths is on their hands because of their inactions. However, there are some solutions. It may be too late to go back in time and implement things before COVID, but changes can still be made. For one, listen to Teresa Tam and drug use experts and academics to decriminalize the possession of drugs to stop the criminalization of drug users. Two, implement a nationwide safe supply of drugs that also takes into consideration euphoria. Three, look at policies on both the provincial and federal level that serve as barriers for implementing more harm reduction services and a different range of site models, including culturally specific models of care. Three, please ensure that substance users are consulted as experts and that users are included in every part of the policymaking process to ensure that the policy directly relates to the needs of substance users and is intersectional. We need to make sure that they are fairly compensated as well and that they are not tokenized because they truly are the insight that we would need to make sure that this policy is accurate and is as helpful as possible. As substance use activists have often said, they talk, we die. More action needs to be done on this